Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Make Life Less Taxing podcast, the show where we uncover what really creates freedom in life and business, and we'll explore stories of those who've learned how to build wealth with purpose.
Welcome back to the Make Life Less Taxing podcast, the show where we go beyond the numbers, spreadsheets, and tax returns to talk about what really matters and what creates freedom in life and business. Today, I'm joined by Michael Mandarino, founder of 123 Investing, a firm that merges value-based planning with personalized strategies, all rooted in faith and clarity. Michael, welcome to the show.
All right, thanks, Daniel. Glad to be here.
Now, Michael, can you share a little bit more about your story, who you are, and what kind of work you do at 123 Investing?
Yeah, great. Thanks for asking. Yeah, my name is Michael Mandarino. I've been a financial advisor since 2002. I currently work with GA Reppel and Company. They're my broker dealer and my registered investment advisor. I've been doing it for almost 24 years, coming up in January. And, we've been putting faith into my practice probably for the last 7 or 8 years, just helping individuals to also be able to grow in their faith. And we also concentrate on using private placements and alternative investments as well.
Awesome. That's great. Now, what was it that first led you into the financial advising?
I was an Army officer over in Germany, and I loved teaching. And I had an opportunity. I used to teach my soldiers about investing. And I had an opportunity. I interviewed with a local company to be able to stay overseas in Germany, be able to work with servicemen and women while they're stationed overseas in Germany. When you're over there, you're kind of outcast because you don't have contact to a lot of the opportunities that folks here in the United States do. So I took that as an opportunity to be able to start my financial planning practice back in 2002 is when I started, January 2002.
Oh, that's great. Now, a lot of advisors focus on numbers. Now, obviously, you just mentioned that you focus on faith and numbers. Where did that conviction kind of come from? What sparked that idea?
Yeah, you know what? I always believed in God, but I really rededicated my life to Jesus Christ in 2012. And through that process over the next 3 or 4 or 5 years, I really started putting more of my faith in God first in everything I do, and to include wanting to do that through my business. So I do, consider that to be a marketplace ambassador. I was blessed to graduate from the Bible Center training for pastors in 2016. And that really was through that 4 year of studies was really kind of my process of realizing, that I can include God in my everyday life.
No, that's really great. I mean, having that focus now, how do you actually see that really helps you to kind of have a little bit different perspective when you go and meet with people? What is that?
For me, it's, I don't have limits on who I work with. I mean, obviously everyone likes to work with the ultra high net worth individuals, but, I felt that God gave me the gift to teach. So if I have the opportunity of, teaching a young 20, 22-year-old that's either fresh out of college or fresh in the workforce, I'll love to take that opportunity because it is a teaching job. I do believe God gave me the gift to teach, and especially with on finances and numbers.
That's great. Listen, I always tell people the 2 most important dates are the day that you're born and the date when you find out the reason why. So I think you kind of
That's really good.
that.
Sure, 100%.
Yeah. Now, when a new client first reached out to you, what are the situations that you usually see with them, either financial or even emotionally? Like what is it that you kind of help them with specifically?
A lot of them, it's the unknown. I mean, obviously not everyone works with financial advisors. In fact, 15 to 20% of the populations like to do everything themselves. But it's the individuals that are scared of their future. They don't know what their future looks like, and they're very scared of numbers. They know they have maybe a 401k because they were told to do it. They know that, hey, I should do a Roth IRA because somebody told me to do it, but they don't really understand it, nor do they like doing that type of work. It really causes them stress, even getting statements in the mail. So that's the peace of mind that we get. And the other peace of mind is if there is a husband or a wife that does all the finances, for them to know that if they have an advisor and a team to work with, God forbid if something did happen to their loved one, they'll have someone to call, someone that they would know, like, and trust.
No, okay. Now let's go a little bit deeper. You kind of mentioned some of this already, but what specific challenges do you notice clients often don't realize that they're facing until you start working together?
You know what? A lot of I work with a lot of military folks who've transitioned to their second career, and they start making too much money, which you think it's, oh, that's a great problem to have. But then they realize, oh, I can't invest in a Roth IRA anymore because I make too much money. Or now I'm in a higher tax bracket. I have these large tax issues, and probably about 6 years ago, I really started do a deeper dive in what we call private placements, which are tax advantaged investments. And the worst thing I hate hearing from somebody, I wish I knew you last year when I had that very large company buyout or that large stock option. Because, Uncle Sam's going to take over 50% of that in most cases, depending on what state they live in. So, when they meet with someone like myself, we go through, we analyze. Now, I don't offer tax or legal advice, but we do have products that can potentially fit their needs.
Okay, now can you walk us through what tends to surprise people most when they come, when it comes to, just talking about brought up taxes or retirement planning?
For me, the surprise is just the not knowing things that are out there. We work with some of our programs are in like the natural gas space as an example. I've met folks who actually sell natural gas at a higher level, and they didn't realize there's investments that they could be a part of that can actually, support the industry they're in and give them large tax breaks. So, that's one of the big things. Another thing is a lot of folks don't realize that there are faith-based investing. There are companies out there that screen every single stock that's in part of their portfolio, whether it's a mutual fund or exchange traded fund, and they eliminate a lot of the things that would potentially be against like Christian, not only Christian, Muslim, Buddhist. If you have a religious mindset, whether it's gambling companies, pornography, most major religions, there's a lot of things out there that they wouldn't want to necessarily invest in because those companies do support that. So that's a really big surprise.
Oh, okay. Now, is it primarily like your focus? Is it primarily on you sit down with somebody? Can you walk us through what you actually do? Is it like focusing more on the planning? Is it more on the investments or protection? What is the specific focus of your practice?
Yeah, so we do holistic financial planning. So for us, it's obviously gathering all their information up, understanding that they are a unique individuals. No plan is the same, and really try to find out really what their needs are. And also, if they already have somewhat of a plan, we kind of look at that plan and we go through, from now, and we try to get them to start thinking, what does 10 years look like from now? What does 20 years look like from now? And we try to see, are there any holes in their gaps, whether it's, using insurance, life insurance for that protection when they're in their family years. Is it using life insurance to have a need for long-term care insurance or even estate planning? Or is it, hey, I have too much money in my 401k. I don't want to have to take the RMDs out. Now we need to start looking at moving money from a traditional into a Roth IRA. Those are called Roth conversions. So every single individual is different. We like to look at the whole picture, and I like to teach, so we may go through 1 or 2 or 3 sessions of teaching to understand who they are, what their goals are, and the very basics I like to do is, especially when it comes to investing, is here's a bucket of money. How much do you want to put into it? And how much do you want to take out of it? And when you take it out, how fast or how slow do you want it to come out? Whether you want to dump it all out to buy a home, like a second home, or do you want it to trickle out to help support your retirement? So again, those are the goal specifics for each one of their accounts that we work with.
Yeah, I think you bring a great point. I mean, often what it comes down to, you can't really go and give somebody an advice until you find out specifically where they're at, right? So where's their current situation? I often, when I work with people, tell them, hey, doesn't matter wherever you are, you have to start somewhere. So you need to figure out exactly where you're at, what's your current situation. I kind of call it the red dot. And then you also have to find out where you want to go, which is the blue dot. And usually there is a gap, and kind of the solutions that you provide really goes and fits into there. But the most important part is to really get clear on where you're at and where you want to be, because often I think people don't have clarity. So what are some of the biggest financial traps that you see that, your prospects or clients fall into, especially ones that may seem harmless on the surface?
What a big thing is, having been here as an advisor for almost 25 years, I really think the trap of someone buying term insurance when they're younger and never replacing it. 20 years goes very fast, and so does 30 years. Now you can find yourself, if you bought a term insurance policy in your early 20s or even 30s, well, 60 is going to come along and you're still going to have a need for insurance. Now, the difference is that cost of insurance is going to be that much higher. So I think that's always a big surprise. I think a lot of folks they're underinsured is another thing. I mean, I've never had a client come to me after a death in their family saying, wow, I can't believe we had all this insurance. That's not. I mean, sadly, you see GoFundMe accounts all the time, and having insurance put in place for your loved ones could help alleviate that need. And I think that's a really big pitfall, that, not understanding the need for insurance, and then also not understanding the different types of insurance. There's a lot of folks that only say buy term insurance and invest the difference. In my experience, folks don't end up investing the difference. Or if they get hurt, injured, lose a job, they're certainly not investing the difference. So now they're investing the difference is what they're planning on for their retirement, and also to be self-insured. Now in their 60s, they're finding themselves have to go out and get another policy. And that's only if their policy either A, converts over, or B, they actually have to get a new policy. Now they have to make sure they're insurable. Well, 20, 25 years later, there's a good chance that they may or may not be insurable, or they might be on, different types of medications and so forth. So I think that's a really big pitfall.
Yeah, you bring a good point. If a GoFundMe campaign is not a financial plan, that should never be a kind of a plan for that. Now, have you ever had a client who thought that, they were doing pretty good, they were all right, but later really realized that, unintentionally they really sabotaged their future? Can you come up, or do you have an example of that?
Yeah, I mean, I've worked with folks along the years where, whether it's they knew that they had some of their colleagues that work with an advisor early on, and they came to me, right before retirement from the military, realizing, wow, if I would just save that $50 a month as a young soldier or young airman, and then keep increasing it over time, time could be our best friend or our worst friend. In a lot of cases, it's not having the ability to, start early, and the fear of not getting started, the reason not. So it's interesting. I clearly remember that early on in my career, where Jones says, hey, I know that my colleagues who've been doing this and this would have been going back into the 80s through the early 2000s, I know they're worth over $1 million. So I'm behind the power curve because I didn't, I was fearful just to get started.
So why do you think that so many people delay avoiding, doing a financial plan or doing some type of, planning, even when kind of they know it's important, but they still go and delay it?
I think there's fear. And then, and when you're asking for advice from your family members, if they said yes or no, if they say yes, go do this, and then something's wrong, then they're now saying, oh my gosh, they take on that full responsibility, versus a lot of times they'll say, you know what, you're better off doing it your own, and doing on your own sometimes doesn't happen. Or one of the things I think as a financial coach that I like to say is that, just like Warren Buffett says, when the market's crashing, that's when you should be buying. And if you don't have an advisor, most folks are going to start selling because they see it going down, 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 and they think it's just going to keep going down. Now, we can't control that, but history will show you that what goes down eventually will come up. Now, that come up might be a 2-year, 3-year, 5-year cycle, but I think that's one of the issues that definitely comes is that just the fear of not wanting to make a mistake, and then they just lack of doing nothing. I'll get around to it is another. I'll get around to it, and that get around to it could be 2 or 3, 4, even a 5-year stretch, or even longer than that, sadly.
Yeah, unfortunately, there's a huge misconception when it comes down to, and I think you drive a very important point from the perspective of if it's their family or somebody that gave them advice, and they still believe that advice, where a lot of things have changed. And we often talk about that there is a huge difference between kind of the traditional advice that has been there and a lot of the things that have actually changed. And often if kind of there is a lot of, and I would call it financial malpractice that happens because you go and hear, hearsay, you hear somebody say something, oh, that sounds like a good idea, and then they go and try to implement it on their own, not really understanding that whatever the advice they've heard was for a specific situation, not for their situation. And again, it's really so important to find out exactly where somebody's at and what is what do they have that now they can go and apply that, that advice to. Now,
Yes. Yep. And especially if you were to watch the news back in the day where that news was the only time you could really see where the stock market, now you can see it everywhere. But, when you're watching a hearing that the stock market keeps going up, 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 sadly, a lot of folks, they wait till it gets to the up, up because they've seen it happen. Well, I need to get involved. And then there is a market correction. And now they've lost potentially money because they weren't putting it in smartly. They were just maybe putting it all in at once. And there are reasons to do that, but you also got to be cautious of, really understanding what is your risk tolerance. So you're going back to the question, when I sit down with somebody, one of the first things we do is we do send them an email, or we'll sit down with them and try to figure out what is your risk score. Because I can't control what the stock market's going to do, but I can only predict how you're going to feel whether you see a green or a red. And everyone loves green. And they love to say, hey, I'm an aggressive person. But the moment they start seeing some red, then they're like, oh, what happened to my investments? Well, you're an aggressive investor. You should know that that's what you're signed up for, because we can't control the market. But so I do like to use that. It's definitely a value that we provide in our practice to make sure, they're exactly where they need to be at. And then we pick investments around that based off of their risk scores.
yeah, no, you bring up a great point. Again, it's knowing what you are. We can't predict what the future is going to hold, but we can predict how people react to it. And again, being in the right, having the right kind of frame of mind and knowing what you're getting into, right? Like you mentioned, everybody loves to have the green, but nobody likes to go and go into red, or when things do go down. Doesn't matter where they were at, because somehow, the new floor becomes the new ceiling, and it's like, no, that's not how it works. And everybody remembers the top, right? So.
And you're absolutely right. Like my most aggressive investors, when there is a market correction, they are looking to throw more money back into the market because they realize what's going down, that these are now buying opportunities. But again, the flip side, if you don't have a coach or a financial advisor working with you, you may see it down and say, okay, I need to get my money out and protect what I have. And then they lose the upswing that typically would potentially happen whenever that happens.
Yeah, when the stock market is in red, everything's on sale. That's a good time to get in it. Yeah, and I often tell people when we were going through kind of the ups and downs, getting out of the market is the simple and easy part. You just go and make that decision. Getting back into it becomes a lot harder, because that's where people now start thinking about it. Oh, is it now? Is it now? Or where is it? So I think often, unfortunately, people do the opposite. They kind of go and buy high and sell low. And it's like, no, it should be doing the opposite. But it all comes down to, kind of the emotions that they're going through when they're seeing what's happening.
It is. And when it comes to the emotions, I always ask my clients, okay, this is your money. I want you to be able to sleep at night. So you let me know if they decided to get out of the market, how and when do you want to get back in? And we typically would say, let's dollar cost average back in, because the market may drop, it may still drop, but versus, because no one can time the market. If I could time the market, I would obviously be just trading my own money, and I would not have to work and help other people out as well. So, but there are smart ideas that have been in place for years that if you follow those tactics, then you can slowly get back into the market, maybe not hitting the exact bottom, and it still may go down further, but if you're doing it over time, that's typically what we would do.
Yeah. No, you bring a great point. The one advice that I got from a coach, it was around, starting a business and all of this. And it's like, again, starting a business is the easy part. Knowing how you're going to get out of it is the most important part before you even start the business. And I think the same thing, which you just mentioned when it comes to investing, kind of drawing up the rules and saying, hey, I'm going to make the decisions before all of that emotion and everything gets involved in it. And this is, again, where it comes down to going and doing that financial plan and knowing, right, what are the things that you want to go and control and what you can control, as opposed to just kind of going into it blindly.
Yes, absolutely. That's great. Great point.
So, when a client starts, taking control, of their plans, of their finances, especially from a tax perspective, what shifts, for them when you see actually coming over and you start explaining to them how things work? Do you kind of see a shift?
I do. I mean, especially when it comes to some of our unique tax strategies. So we work with stuff that's only available for accredited investors. And for those that are listening on a call, you have to be worth more than $1 million, excluding your home, or you make $200,000 a year as a single investor for the last 2 to 3 years, or 300,000 as a joint investor. So, when you start getting in those higher income tax brackets, you realize there are ways of offsetting. And there's just a traditional, hey, I know I can give money to a church or charity. That's one write-off. But to realize that there are investments, whether it's even in real estate, and some of the private placements we offer, there are tax advantage investment opportunities out there, or even how you give. There are different strategies of giving. For instance, if someone's giving away $10,000 a year, well, and they had a large payment come to them this year, let's say a stock option or a big commission, they can give $20,000 on December 31st into an account, knowing 10,000 of that would be given the following year, and they can kind of control that. It's called a donor advised fund. So there are different ideas and different techniques out there that can really help them in their exact situation. I think that's really kind of the eye-opening experience we have, especially when it comes to helping and folks planning on their investments and what does that look like on their tax saving side.
Yeah. Now, you emphasize that financial planning really should be simple. What does that simplicity actually look like in your work and in your process?
Yeah, and then the simplicity part is that you understand what you're doing. You understand that there is a need to save. I mean, I think that's the big thing. The simplicity part is there's good debt, bad debt, and how to control those. In some cases, I've had clients liquidate their investments because they were just these outrageously priced credit cards that it didn't make any sense that they're paying a 20% credit card debt when they have money sitting over here in an investment that might make 5, 6, 7, 8% depending on the year. So that's all obviously a biggest surprise. Now, as a financial advisor, I get paid for assets under management, so it kind of goes against what someone potentially could do if they're only money managers. But if you're looking at the big picture, for me, it makes the most sense. Let's get you out of debt, and then I'd start rebuilding at that point.
I think you bring a great point, and I've experienced that myself working with clients where, if they already have a credit card, they're paying 20%. They don't realize that they have a guaranteed rate of return of 20%. Good luck finding that anywhere. It doesn't exist. But if they have money on the side, then I would often get a call going, "Hey, Daniel, I've got $50,000 a year that I just got, might come from inheritance or wherever." And the first question was to ask, "Do you have any credit cards? Let's take care of those." No, I want to invest this money. I'm going, you know what? Paying off your debt where you're paying 20% is the greatest investments you can make, because you're not losing. Then you also got to make sure that, maybe you get rid of that credit card and don't running back up, because again, that's a whole nother issue. Just paying off a credit card doesn't mean the problem goes away, because often what would also happen with people, they pay off the credit card. Yeah, they don't put, and I think maybe that's the thinking they have. Well, if I put in an investment, at least I have that. I'm still going to have the credit card. They don't look at the interest rate. But yeah, if you're going to pay off the credit card and you're going to rack it back up, maybe what we should do is, take scissors and cut that up and get it out of your life so that you don't go back into that debt, because that's really not
exactly. And going back to, one of the other things that actually brought me into the industry was when I actually sat down with a financial advisor to do my own financial plan. And I realized as a young officer how much money I was spending on my weekends or travel. And, one of my good friends, God rest his soul, he was working with an advisor and we had the exact same pay, but he was investing double the amount of money that I was investing. And for me, that was a real big opener of just going through a monthly budget and realizing where your surpluses could or couldn't be, and how just by cutting back a little bit here and a little bit there, it can really help enhance your financial plan for the future.
Yeah. Oh, no, listen, one of my saying is every financial advisor should have their own financial advisor. Again, that's a whole other thing. We're not going to go down that rabbit hole, but I think that, you bring that point, because I think what they're trying to get clients to do, they're not doing themselves. That's a whole other topic. Now, how do you help clients not just build wealth, but use it in ways that really reflects their values and goals?
Yeah. So for me, it's depending on how the clients are, what kind of assets they have. When it comes to goals-based planning, when it comes to, not every one of my investor clients, that faith is important to them. But for those that it really are, I can show them, hey, these are clean investments that, especially, let's say, just using the topic of pornography or tobacco. We had an example, one of the companies we work with, that the guy inherited a lot of stock from his grandmother, and she died of lung cancer. And, they had won't mention a name, but there was a large company that was a big part of her portfolio. And his first instinct was, why would I want to own a company that killed my grandma? Or helped kill. So those are very big ideas when it comes to that. Others is, being able to use their assets, because the rich keep getting richer because they know how to use and leverage their money in various different ways, whether it's how to use their equity in their home to be able to potentially purchase other things. Now, these are all things that I can't recommend that you can borrow from it, but I do have a lot of clients that like to use leverage when it comes to whether it's, using their investments as collateral so they don't have to liquidate their investments, or using their insurance policies as collateral because there's, free policy loans that you can get out of there. But those are all things that you got to make sure you're working with a team, because just by borrowing from somewhere, it may or may not make sense. But if you know that you can pay that loan back in the next year or 2 years, and you had good opportunities, those are all things that, we kind of help our clients work with.
Yeah, no, that's great advice. Now, what does success and maybe even, focusing on successful retirement really looks like for your clients beyond just the, dollars in account or that number? Because I think this is the one challenge that I had with the industry. It always talks about, hey, it's all about that number. You need to have a certain number before you retire, which is not really true, because the number doesn't matter. It's more or less the income or the the cash flow you're going to have in retirement, because you can retire with a huge number in your account being invested in the stock market, and the next day there is, let's say, a correction. That doesn't matter now anymore. So what does that success really look like for you when you work with clients?
Yeah, so I'll use an example. One of my clients we just planned for their retirement, and she's going to be planning it. I think next year she's retiring. So really, you made a great point on cash flow. You have your fixed assets, your fixed that this has to happen no matter what. That could be, food, electricity, phone. So you have to really know, what does that monthly budget look like? What does my outgoing cash flow look like? And then what does my fund bucket look like? Those are two very, very different things. When you're planning for retirement, you want to have hopefully enough to do your fixed outcome and your fund bucket. But if you're looking at maybe planning just to survive, well, survival is, do you have enough just to pay your fixed bucket of what do I need to live? And I think you said about that number, everyone is different. So the earlier they can kind of understand, what does my budget look like? And you go back, when I work with somebody, I say, okay, here's your budget. Now we can project inflation, projected. Obviously, last couple of years we've had some different inflation rates, but we know typically every 20 to 24 years, if you needed $1 today, you'll need $2 in 24 years. So that's the inflationary. So when you're looking at it, going back to the budget cash flow, if you know what you need now, we can predict most likely what you're going to need in the future. We don't know exactly, but that's what we can plan for. And then when you can retire, when you have cash flow, whether it's coming from your investments or taking some investments and put it on the side and making sure you're into like a cash flowing annuity or a bond or a municipal bond, that that money is going to come in to help offset it. That's what true success looks like, is the ability to walk away from what they love doing and being able to maybe consult in the future, but knowing that they have a cash flow that's going to cover, their fixed needs and then ultimately their fund bucket of money as well.
Yeah, no, you bring a great point. So what's really at stake for someone who kind of stays stuck in, either reactive or surface level planning? What do they risk losing, not just financially, but also emotionally?
I mean, it's the loss factor that we can't control. We can't control black swan events. We can't control deaths in the family. Like, those are all things that are out of your control. You can't control if you're going to be sick and need long-term care in the future. I mean, those are all things that you can plan for, but if you didn't plan and something like that, a catastrophe happens, then that's where you can really just say that's where you would poke a hole in their plan and realize, man, that little pin of that happening will implode their entire plan, everything they've been saving for. So, I think it's just having that full peace of mind. Financial planning it's a lifetime process. You might not be able to do it all now, but let's cover the short-term needs. Let's start looking intermediate and then also start planning for the long term. But, those are all things that, a true financial planning company will look at for their clients.
Yeah, you bring a great point. Financial plan is not a thing or an event. It's a lifetime of doing. It kind of gives you that direction. Now, you've worked with many families through transitions. When you think about your own legacy, what do you hope that your clients will remember about the way that you have served them?
That I was looking after their best interest, that they enjoyed having our meetings. They enjoyed the fact that I was able to alleviate some stress out of their families that allowed them to do other things, maybe spend more time with their loved ones versus spending time and analyzing what the stock market's going to do tomorrow. Those are obviously valuable times. So for me, I'd really like to remember I was someone who was able to be a resource. I was always part of their team, and ultimately, possibly they can even say, "Hey, he was like family to me." And I have some clients that I've been working with since the early 2000s, and yeah, they truly feel like family. I enjoy our conversations when we get together. So for me, that's kind of what my main giveaway would be, and hopefully they receive that.
Yeah, no, that's really great. Now, what's one mindset or maybe belief you wish that every client would adopt before they even sit down with you?
That a financial plan is kind of like I just mentioned. It is a lifelong process. You don't have to do everything at once, but the earlier you get started, the better off you'll be long term.
Yeah, no, that's a really great advice. Now, as we start wrapping up in here, I've got I call them the quick hits. They're 4 questions. Usually you can just answer them in one word. We can go in a little bit deeper into it. But the first question is what's one of your favorite books that you would recommend?
Favorite books? Well, the Bible.
Yeah, no, it's a great book. We can stop it there or we can go a little bit further if you want, but no, that's a great advice. I love that. So what's a morning habit or routine that you kind of swear by?
I love waking up early in the morning. I do like spending time with God in the morning, and I haven't consistently done this all my life, but also working out, getting out, and taking care of yourself first.
Yeah, no, both important things. A bucket list item that you have not done yet.
Ooh, bucket list. I definitely want to be able to scuba dive the Great Barrier Reef or in Thailand. I think it would be a pretty amazing bucket list.
Yeah, no, that sounds amazing. What's a surprising hobby or interest that really recharges you?
Oh, surprising interest. I'm a foodie. My wife and I are both foodies. We love eating. We love going to different restaurants and trying different cuisines. So that's always a good recharge. Of course, maybe the next day I'm not always recharged. Might have a sore belly depending on what I ate, but we're foodies.
Yeah, no, that's great. Yeah, spending time with loved ones and doing something that you both are interested in. That's really great. Now, I always ask this question at the end. I call it kind of the hot question. Let's pretend and fast forward to the end of your life, and if everyone that you have ever talked to, they basically forgot everything you've taught them or you showed them, but they do have the opportunity to kind of remember that one most important message from you. What would you want that one message to be that they would remember?
That when it comes to happiness, money doesn't make you happy. However, how you manage your money can not only make you happy, but if you're a good steward, can also help you with your happiness when you're able to not only take care of yourself, but also potentially bless others as well.
Oh, Michael, thank you so much for sharing not just your wisdom, but also your heart and your mission. Where can people find out more information about you and the work that you do?
Yes, they can reach me online at www.123-investing.com, or they can call or text at 813-710-4123. That's secure texting or phone calls.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. So if you're listening, make sure that you check out Michael's website and explore the tools and strategies that Michael has created to really help you retire with meaning and peace of mind. Michael, thank you again for your time and for really your truth that you have shared with us. And remember, making life less taxing isn't just about money. It's about freedom, clarity, and purpose. Keep building wealth, keep protecting your legacy, and keep living the untaxable lifestyle. We'll see you next time on the Make Life Less Taxing podcast. Thank you again, Michael.
Thanks a lot, Daniel. Have a blessed day. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of Make Life Less Taxing podcast. Be sure to check out our other top advisor interviews at makelifeLessTaxingPodcast.com.